Suit up, strap in, warm the tires, and leave on yellow. Time for the MitsuTimes podcast, presented by MitsuTimes.org, the home of the fastest Mitsubishi cars. With your host, Josh.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the MitsuTimes podcast. Today, my guest is Mr. Nick Kruger. He is the owner and driver of a very cool Autocross Evo. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing, Josh?
I am great. Glad to have you on. I feel like I love having some people who are doing something different other than drag racing, as much as I love drag racing. So, and seeing some pictures of your car and watching, you going out there and doing some autocross, it looks like a pretty nice little setup you got.
Yeah, it's certainly starting to turn some fast lap times. There's a lot going on there, and definitely excited to kind of share a little bit more what we have into it.
Good deal. Well, Nick, tell us, introduce yourself and tell us what got you into motorsports in the first place.
Yeah, certainly. So my name's Nick Kruger. I live in northern Maine, so kind of an interesting place to be into motorsport racing. Basically was born on a racetrack. My dad was a New England champion in dirt sprint car racing, so I kind of had the depth and breadth of what that was all about as a young child. Raced a lot of motocross as a kid, and then getting out of college here, I decided to start getting into autocross because all my mechanical engineering friends were big into it up here. So that's kind of my history in motorsports. I basically started about 2.5, 3 years ago. I've been just plugging away at it ever since.
Okay. Well, in your journey towards autocross, what drew you to the Evo 8?
I've always wanted an Evo. I always was a big, Subaru hater because at the time, everybody and their brother had them over here in New England.
Mm-hmm.
The joke was if you lived in Vermont, you owned a Subaru, and that was just part of your residency. But trying to be different, I bought an Evo 8 when I was in college, and went down the depth spiral, I guess, per se, of building it, modding it, breaking it, blowing it up, and repeat and repeat. And at the time, it was the vehicle that I had in hand to go kind of chase down autocross with. I didn't have really much else, so that was kind of the tried and true, I guess.
Definitely a great vehicle to start with, I guess.
Yes. Oh, for sure. I mean, we can kind of get into the story in a little bit here. So it's a vehicle I actually found in a farm field abandoned.
Wow.
Bought it as a shell, kind of sight unseen, put it on a trailer, and the first day I had it, I completely cut the whole front end out of it, started making a tube chassis car.
Wow. Well, Nick, one thing that's interesting to me is I have, I wanted to get into autocross for a long time. I'm just scared of my first time going out on track and messing it up in front of everybody. Do you remember your first autocross event and how it went?
Yeah, so, I got actually a very dramatic story that we can get into here. So my first autocross event was not an Evo. It was about 2023. I had a friend that said, hey, you should try autocross out and jump in our beater Miata. So we quad drove a Miata. I fell in love with it. And then the second event was actually at a abandoned Cold War nuclear B-52 bomber base at the tip of Maine. And so I brought what I thought was a prep Evo 8 out, the same car that I found abandoned in a farm field, and brought it up there. And the second day of running, there was a very big accident where myself and another person were hit by a Corvette that went off course. We were thrown about 70 feet.
Hang on, Nick. I can barely hear you now.
How about this?
Yeah, that's much better.
Okay. So first autocross was in a beater Miata where we quad drove the crap out of it. We had a bunch of people there and just kind of showing me the ropes. I was hooked at that point on, and I said, well, the next event I'll make a big attempt to show up there in my Evo. So my second autocross event was my first one in my Evo 8 that I found in a farm field. And it was a tragic second day up there because there was a Corvette that ran off course. It hit myself and another person as course workers, and basically threw us about 60 to 70 feet across the course. Basically woke up on the course and broken bones, and one of us had to be airlifted. But the better part of the story is the Evo that I brought out there was parked on the course, and that Evo basically played a very large game of high impact billiards, and sent when the Evo was impacted and sent about 250 feet down the runway. And if that car wasn't there, I would have been struck again by that same Corvette that hit me the first time after I landed on the ground. So effectively, that Evo saved my life, is the best way to put this. So we took a kind of look at the whole situation after it all unfolded with the drone, and saw, where we were standing and where we landed. It would have been smoked again by that same Corvette. So the story continues too, even farther. I was going into pre-op for my surgery. I basically broke everything in my throttle foot, so my right foot was all broken and mashed up. And I had a friend call me that was going out to Mid-Ohio to go racing, and I said, "Hey, we found a quarter cut of an Evo 8, out west, and we have somebody that's driving through. Do you want it?" And just getting about loopy to go into the surgery, I said, "Sure, I'll take the car." So they coordinated all the efforts to basically pick this quarter cut of a car up. They put it on a trailer. They brought it all the way back up from Maine, from basically the Ohio area. And so, getting out of surgery, I basically now had a quarter cut of a shell sitting in my driveway for me to start grafting into this car that saved my life.
Wow. Yeah, that's some sentimental attachment right there.
Yeah, and for a car too that I was going to race it once, and I was looking to sell it to chase other financial endeavors. But at that point, I think I made the decision it was going to stay with me for a long time.
Good. Well, Nick, tell us about the current setup on your Evo.
Yeah, so it's it started as a pretty mild street setup, and since it's been hit, I kind of went bananas with it. After grafting in a whole new quarter panel, I put a whole new tub in the rear. One of the frame rails got a little tweaked, so I cut the frame rails out. It went tubular on the rear end, so it's a tube kind of rear end car. It's a tube front end car. Recently this winter, I went through a whole slew of upgrades. So I fabricated tubular front and rear subframes for the car. I got SSB front and rear spindles on it. Just got some Evo X lower control arms with offset bushings. AST two-way coilovers front and rear with a 13K front, 17K rear Hyperco setup. Some white line bars on it. And then I guess for tires, I'm running 265/35 Kumho V730Rs. Okay. We had some good success on another Miata that we were running, so we bought them. Are they the best tire for Autocross? Probably not. I would definitely go for like a Bridgestone RE71R. And I guess power-wise for the car, it's a stock lower block, so short block stock. Has a built GSC S2 billet head, with all the fixings and built valves and all that kind of stuff. I have an old school T4 AMS twin scroll turbo kit on it, with a brand new BorgWarner S258 SXR turbo ID1000s. Has a carbon twin clutch on it, carbon one-piece drive shaft, two-piece brake rotors all the way around, track pads up front, ceramics in the rear. After it got hit, I put a 15-gallon fuel cell in the rear to basically start moving all the rear weight backwards, trying to achieve like a 50-50 weight balance on the car. And we're just starting to play into the aerodynamic game now. Front bumper has some cover plates and has a Voltec splitter, a very large hood vent, which is fantastic in the rain. Interior is basically half stripped with a bucket seat, and that's kind of the setup.
Okay. Well, Nick, out of all those mods that you just talked about, which one do you think has had the biggest impact on your autocross performance?
Yeah, and that's a great question, because I've gone in and made a ton of change to this vehicle. A lot of racers will say, you start with small changes, and I kind of took the widest paintbrush I had in my box and slapped it with it. So I would say that the SSB spindles and putting on the AST two-way suspension was the most dramatic impact that I saw on the car. But with that being said, too, having a really dialed and proper alignment for autocross specifically, I thought was huge. So chasing like a 3.5 degree or more camber setup up front with a little bit of toe, and 2.5 or more up in the rear with a little bit of toe out. And, also trying to move some stuff around, too, to get that corner balance, to a 60-40 or a 50-50 split on the car.
Well, speaking of the balance, Nick, one thing that I find interesting for autocrossers specifically is how do you manage to balance the power of the Evo versus the handling when it comes to the super tight courses that autocross offers?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So what we started to figure out, and just through filter feeding from other racers, is power delivery. We're looking for the utmost fastest spool you can find possible out of the setup. So in reality, a stock Evo 8 turbo or Evo 9 turbo on a vehicle is perfectly fine, with a tune. I think the handling modifications on an Evo are have greater impact than having going out there with a 600 horsepower car. Getting your bump steer figured out and having proper coilovers, a good alignment, I think weighs way more than going out there with a hot boy tune and a giant turbo on a 2-liter.
For sure.
So the other thing that we found too is that most recently I'm just coming off an autocross course and we were having a little bit of tune issues. So I pulled the boost control out of the car, ran it on just a wastegate spring, so 14-pound springs on a twin scroll setup, and you're not getting the reaction time you want out of the turbo, but a very linear setup. And I thought that almost to be better than having a 450 wheel horsepower tune on the car, because you're able to really start feeling out the setup of the car and how it handles and how to start feeling how that car will actually start turning through corners, because you're not fighting how much speed and power you have in that vehicle.
Yeah. Well, Nick, one thing that I always find, excuse me, Nick, one thing that I always find interesting is it seems like racers from every discipline of motorsports always have the one part or the few parts that they installed that really didn't work out or they regretted. Is there any part of this build that you wish that you would have done differently?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's definitely a couple different ways I wish I'd done differently. Either just in the sequence of operation of, chasing power instead of handling first. I think I wish I went down the handling road before the power road. But I also have another Voltex Evo 9 sitting in my shop. I had an FP71 H2A setup on it, and I sold that to chase other parts for this car. And every single time I get out on track, I kick myself for selling that 71 HTA setup. That was probably, I think, one of the best setups I think you could put on one of these cars.
Mm-hmm.
You get that immediate spool. It makes a great power. And that I kick myself every single time I put the car on the trailer saying, "Wow, I shouldn't have sold that turbo setup."
For sure. Well, Nick, I know it's common practice to walk the course before autocross runs really start happening. What's your approach when you're walking the course? What are you looking for?
Yeah, so I actually try to walk the course with some of the fastest people that race in our club, because what I find is that they're very analytical on their lines and how they view the track. So for me, I've been racing for about 2.5 years or so now, so I would still consider myself a rookie or a novice, however you want to look at it. But I'm looking at lines. I'm trying to understand, where I can be on the gas, where I'm stabbing the brakes going into some of these corner boxes. Basically, just understanding too, with some of these more experienced racers, what they're picking apart in the track, how they're looking to decipher how the track is going to be fast, and applying that to my own driving style.
For sure. Well, speaking of rookies or just starting out, what do you see that newer autocross drivers? What are common mistakes that you see that maybe someone listening could avoid?
Yeah, I think some common mistakes you see when a first-time driver will go out in autocross. I'll stand on the same podium that I'll speak from right now, is that walking out there with a really high horsepower car, thinking that it will be the best thing out there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for some people, it's like you need to start small and almost find that cheap little Miata or somebody else's low horsepower car to get out in, and step yourself up from that. So, going from a low speed car to a high speed car,
mm-hmm.
I think that's a big common mistake. You see some guys come out with a 2024 BMW M2 and the car just, they can't handle it. It's too much car for that driver. But more specifically in just driving style, some of these folks aren't using momentum to kind of carry themselves through the course.
Right.
So, they're just unable to keep the speed. I think autocross is a momentum game, especially when you're running a lower horsepower car like a Miata or so.
Mm-hmm.
And then also too, slowing down too much, so too much brakes, not using the skinny pedal enough, so not using gas, I guess per se, going through the corners. Some also folks just like the downshift to be cool, so everybody can hear the crackle too. Those are kind of the things that I see out when I'm working the course.
Okay. Well, so let's say when you go through the gate or whatever it is, and you're about to unload the car from the trailer. How do you mentally prepare before that first time run? What happens between then and then?
Yeah, so getting the car off the trailer to getting it on course, for the first run there, it's I got a maintenance list I'm going through, and just kind of checking all the dots to make sure that the car is good and it's not going to break out on course, putting myself or somebody else in danger, if something were to break. Then moving forward to the maintenance items of, hey, do we have oil in the car? Is there brake fluid? All that kind of other stuff. Mm-hmm. After a course walk, I'll try to do it at speed. So go out there on a bike or a scooter or something like that, just so you can get a little bit more than just walking through it.
For
so
sure.
You can kind of feel it out at speed, even though it's 5 to 15 miles an hour. But what I'll also try to do is before I get out for my first time run, I'll try to ride with somebody else so I can visualize the course at speed in someone else's vehicle as a passenger, and I find that to be extremely helpful. So then from there, I'll kind of sit in the car and visualize the course, and try to plan out shift points, braking points, where I'm going to be squeezing the gas all the way through it, and also kind of keep my ears open too to listen from other drivers, where they're taking some of these lines, are there corners that we can be faster, or optional slaloms or such. So I think a lot of it is just watching other drivers. We find that there's a huge advantage of running the course first, but also working the course first as well, because now you can start seeing how other people are driving the track.
Okay, that makes sense. So, Nick, as a driver, do you prefer the tight autocross courses, or do you prefer like the fast-flowing ones?
Yeah, great question. I enjoy the really fast-flowing layouts, but the tight technical courses too, I also enjoy them because, man, it's a ball buster sometimes out there, and you're kind of scratching your head at the end of the day wondering where you can pick up more speed. Why did this $1,500 1990 Mazda Miata with a 1.6 liter spank me all day here? So I think there's definitely a lot of fun with that. For an Evo, in whole reality here, right. An Evo with a fast-flowing course, I mean, it really lets you start getting into the boost, using all that power. And if you have a setup that you can rotate the rear end of the car, a fast-flowing course is absolutely phenomenal in an Evo. And I think that's really where that car shines.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
This episode of the MitsuTimes podcast is brought to you by MKS Motorsport. MKS Motorsport prides itself in producing quality, lasting parts for the StarQuest community. MKS has been a key player in the StarQuest community for over 13 years. Their parts are tested and proven to replace, outlast, and fit better than OEM. MKS parts are race-proven and can be found on nearly all StarQuests on our StarQuest list. Find out more about their products and services at mksmotorsport.com.
So, Nick, what has been your most memorable event or win with this Evo?
Yeah, so that's kind of a funny question. So this start in 2025 is my first full season racing the car. 2023 is when I put the car out on the track and the car got damaged. Probably the most memorable moment though was the car got hit in August. I had my surgery, and in end of October, right around Halloween, I had the car back out there. I pulled out most of the damage, and I was in the car racing it again 2 months after, that big accident happened. So a lot of people call me crazy for it. I just call it dedicated and, still chasing, trying to improve the car because that was the whole point of getting it out there. Sadly, I only made it 2 or 3 laps before, my foot was swollen enough that I couldn't push on the gas pedal. But that was probably the most memorable thing for me, was getting back out there within 2 months to say, hey, look, I'm committed. And then following year, when we went back up to that same event with that car, it performed awesome. And I felt like I had a little bit of redemption time, at that track that I got hit at. So I think that was probably my most memorable event so far, and I'm hoping this year we find some more good wins. And they're definitely loading. They're coming soon.
Good. We'd love to hear that. So Nick, have you had any mechanical issues during an event, like either a tire failure or some type of mechanical failure?
Oh boy. Well, it's an Evo, so you're bound to have it. It just kind of comes with owning an Evo 8 or 9 or 10.
Mm-hmm.
So we drive on some pretty remote tracks where you're in the middle of nowhere, in auto parts stores 30 minutes away, and they may not even have anything you need.
Right. So
we try to load up with a bunch of spare parts. I got some stories that others can probably tell a little bit better, but me running the car down a 5-mile runway at midnight, wide open throttle, gates completely lit up going through the hood, and we're tuning it, the night before the event. We had to make a custom computer connector to log the wideband. So a little bit of soldering, and I had to use a couple plastic spoons to basically move the wires around so you can get wideband data to send out to Ken, my tuner. Done a couple trackside ABS swaps, so completely yanking ABS out of the car when the module failed, put in a non-ABS Evo 8 RS setup, or pulling out my big Gucci purse to smack in the inside of the chassis because the front fender wells like to eat the insides of the tires. So I've been through it all, I'd like to think.
A little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything, for sure.
So, Nick, how would you say that the Evo is stacking up against the competition in the class at your local autocross?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I first brought it out in 23, I would say it was not competitive. The car was it was not geared right, or it was not set up right, I guess, for the class I'm in. I compete in Extreme Street A, so there's everything between RX-8s to BMWs, or there's even a local NSX that comes out and kicks all our butts. But as of this year, with the improvements I've made, the weight reduction going on the 2-ways, that car is very competitive. I was just looking at the times from my most recent race this weekend. I was about 0.4, so 0.4 of a second out from second place. And in front of that was an NSX that was the fastest fender there. So kind of a hard car to touch, but it has become more and more competitive. And the more I drive the car and start to feel comfortable driving it, I think I'm scraping time away from it, which is fantastic. So it is asking to be a podium car every single time we pull it off the trailer, is the best way to put that.
Good
so
deal.
if the driver mods allow, then it will be a podium car.
Love it. All right, Nick, for question 15, I'm going to take that out and add it down in future plans, and I'll just, since you already talked about, doing local autocross only, I'm going to say, do you plan to travel for national events in the future?
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
All right, Nick, so how do you analyze your runs? Are you using the data from the ECU that you've collected, or are you using video that you've captured, or are you just using kind of seat of the pants?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something I've been struggling with, I would say. A lot of it's just seat time, a lot of it's just analyzing your times, or having somebody that is more seasoned than me in the passenger seat pointing out, the errors that I'm making on course. I try to have a GoPro on the car or something like that, just so you can kind of take a look at the video of the car and how it's reacting, if you need to make changes or whatnot. But I would say a good next step for me is to buy the SolarStorm setup, so we can really start comparing between myself and others with either my car or other cars. Where they're faster, and where their braking points are, and kind of line choices, etc., like that. In the autocross community, there's a lot of time I think you can find with going after a SolarStorm setup. And I think that it's a very good investment for somebody that's trying to be extremely competitive.
We've heard a couple racers come on here and talk about that and how useful of a tool it is.
Yeah. Oh, it's extremely useful. And, you start looking around at some of the fastest people in the club, and what do they have on their dash? It's a 10-inch tablet with Solo Storm on it, and they're walking the course and, making sure that they have a setup Solo Storm, and, they are actively finding time every single lap to make sure that they are the fastest out there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, Nick, like you said, let's say that I have, Evo 8, 9, 10. What advice would you give me for starting out in autocross?
Yeah, wow. Well, I think of it as, what would I do if I was to do it all over again, if I had to push the reset button? I would focus more on a well-performing chassis. So forget the big power, forget chasing the high horsepower numbers. Set yourself up something with good tires, a nice set of coilovers, Fortunato or other Ohlins or something like that. Make some of the small tweaks so you get the roll center correction. Have a really nice alignment that enables you to rotate the car. If you have a car that rotates, and even if it makes stock power, you will be fast. I will say that you will be fast there. I think from my experiment this past weekend here, having a car that made big power and pulling all the power out of it and running on a wastegate tune, I was faster without the big power in the setup. So that showed me too that the handling mods do trump power, especially with an Evo out in the course. And as time goes on here, and as I get faster with my driving experience, then I can start handling the power. But for somebody just starting out, a basic bolt-on car with some good handling mods and a light tune on it, my God, it'd be a ripper for sure.
Mm-hmm. No doubt about that. So, Nick, who or what would you say has helped you improve the most as a driver?
I'd say bigger improvements for me as a driver is just seat time. End of the day, it's like the rule of 10,000. You have to keep trying at it and keep chipping away at it. So dual driving in specifically autocross is extremely helpful. We have a Miata, so just a little stock E Street Miata that we race as well. And getting in that and driving a slower car on the same track and then jumping into a fast car like an Evo, I think has helped me improve the most, because I can drive a slow car really fast, and then I get into a fast car and hopefully drive it faster. But that translates to learning the course more. You get 8 to 15 extra laps a race, and a Miata being a little bit of a tail happy car, and you have a tail happy setup on your Evo, I think that translates very nicely between the two. And the last thing that I think helps me improve the most as a driver is mid-event, I'll try to go take a ride as a passenger with somebody that has, the fastest time at the moment, and sit with them and take a lap with them to see, what are their lines, where are they carrying all this extra speed, where are these additional or non-additional braking points that they're putting in that I'm not doing, and try to, steal a little bit from what they're doing in their racing habits and, put it into my next lap. So more recently, I did this on Sunday. I went in with my friend Zach Sawyer. He has a very hopped up Chevy S10 pickup truck that goes extremely fast. And after one lap with him, I hopped back in the Evo, and I found 4 seconds right there, just in riding from his truck to my Evo. So
it makes a lot of sense. I feel like we hear a very similar story from a lot of road race type builds. All right, Nick, so do you plan to eventually travel to the national autocross events, or do you want to kind of keep it local to you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I love chasing big dreams. So, I'd love to, to go over to UMI or do Summit Autocross Week with some of the big boys like Sean Crestrock and some of the guys over there. I've been printing their photos out of their cars and putting them on my wall for a while. It would be really cool to, rub some shoulders with them and see, where I start stacking up to some of the big boys out there.
For sure.
They're great resources of information. They're really fast drivers. People that I aspire to be. So it would be cool to, be in the same arena with those guys and, just kind of play ball with them.
No doubt about that. I love watching that King of the Mountain. That's one of my, that whether you like autocross or not, that'll have you on the edge of your seat.
Yeah, oh, for sure. And I know Sean, Sean's extremely fast out there. My buddy Zach here in his Chevy S10 pickup truck, he also goes to King of the Mountain, gives some people a run for their money over there as well. So, it'd be cool to be part of that ranking system.
No doubt. Yeah. Well, Nick, if money were no object, what does this Evo look like? Let me start that over. Well, Nick, if money were no object, what does this dream Evo build look like?
Oh boy, that's a CVS receipt of answers there. I guess if I was to boil it down really quick though, for an autocross prepped Evo, it would be a built 2.4 liter 4G64. Calling TRE and getting their whole catalog of parts. A built 5-speed, built transfer case. I got the built rear end in the car already. And then also just kind of more or less focusing on more aero. So, it has a stock wing on it, it has a stock splitter or a Voltex front splitter on the car currently, but, getting in there and starting to do some more aerodynamic focused parts on the car. We got some fiberglass doors and stuff sitting on the shelf for it right now. And we're working on developing a 3D printed dual element wing for the car. Okay. So that's something else we're chasing down is, how can we start making the car a little bit faster with, aerodynamics at play. So that definitely resides if the money were no object thing, because I know we're going to fail a bunch of times before we find something that works. So we'll just be burning money, on one fist and spending on the other.
Costs money to fail.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. But if you're not failing, you're not going farther.
I know that's right. Well, Nick, do you have any plans in the future to move on to other forms of racing like time attack or even, wheel stuff?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. As I sit here in this podcast chat with you, I got a photo of, the Tilton Evo right in front of me. It's the first thing I look up at every day when I get up. It's the last thing I see when I go to bed. So yeah. I would say one day, time attack would be really cool to do. Try to keep in touch with some of the guys that are doing it across the country here in the United States or even overseas, and just pick apart their setups and see what I would need to do to go that extra mile. But to get there, I need to gain more experience. The thing holding me down the most is the nut behind the wheel, and that's me. So getting out to some more track days like Club Motorsports or Palmer down in Mass, and actively starting to chase out a track setup where we are going a lot faster than just an autocross course.
Right. You're definitely in the right region for fast Evos.
Yeah, that's for sure.
New England seems to be where they're built.
Yeah. RRT definitely has that postage stamp for sure down here.
Yeah. Well, Nick, what is it about autocross that keeps you coming back year after year these last few years?
Yeah, so I've been doing it for 2.5 years. I've had probably the scariest upbringing into autocross, after being hit by a car that went off course. But what keeps me coming back, even after an incident like that, which I think would deter a lot of people from racing again, is just the people. End of the day, the people we have in our club here at Cumberland Motor Club, they're just second to none. It's more or less turned into a second family to me. Everybody's super supportive. They put themselves beside and they want to see other people succeed, which I don't think you see in a lot of different motorsports applications. But it's a great group of people, and that's the reason why I keep coming back and keep spending more money and keep perfecting my setup, is just to keep going forward with these same people that have pushed me forward a lot.
Mm-hmm. Well, Nick, where can people find and follow you on social media? Because I feel like some of the action shots you have are too good. People need to see it for themselves.
Well, you can sharpen the pitchforks and stuff, because I should be more active on Instagram, and I'm not. But I do loiter out on the Facebook forums. If people really want to get in touch with me, I'm more than willing to chat with them on Facebook or whatnot. I'm on the Motorsport Evo page there, and, kicking around the forum, selling parts and stuff like that, and just always willing to help people out. So, if you need to get in touch with me, come find me. I'm more than willing to do what I can do to help you out.
Definitely.
But yeah, I guess a good Instagram account would be at Krugs, so KRUEGSS, and then my name on Facebook, Nick Kruger.
And those will all be linked below, so you can no excuse to not at least go follow them.
That's right. That means I got to post every less than every 6 months now. So
we need some updates.
That's right.
I feel like once I listen to one of these episodes, I'm invested now. I have to see it succeed. Well, Nick, at the end, I always give people a chance to give a thanks or a shout out to anybody who's helped them out along the way, anybody who's helped them get their car where it is. Is there anybody that you want to give a thanks or a shout out to?
Yeah. Oh boy. Well, after listening to my story at the beginning of the episode, I have a laundry list of people. Some bigger hitters here. I got Ken McDonald from Black Sheep Tuning. He does all my tunes for me. He's been awesome. He has probably pulled more all-nighters than myself working on this car, behind the scenes getting me a hot tune. So Ken, really appreciated it. I got a couple other local people here, Devin Maynard, Braylon Creswell. They're actually my neighbors. They got a shop, we got an alignment rack, we got a lift. I spend more time on their setup than they do, and I owe them a huge one, and that's, a bigger secret to my success. And I also have Zach Sawyer from Dirigo Motorsports Engineering. He's been helping me out with a lot of prototype Evo parts. He's also super fast on that Chevy S10, so big shout out to Zach. My partner Kyra, I really appreciate all she does for me. Just keep me fed so I can work on the race car. And then, the whole other group of people from Cumberland Motor Club to, my close friends and family. They believe in me. They keep telling me to keep doing what I love, and that's all I've been doing is just chasing everything I love to do here. So
don't get much better than that. All right, well, Nick,
it really doesn't.
For sure. Nick, I want to say thank you for taking the time to come on here and tell your story and tell the story of your very beautiful Evo 8. I can't wait to see some more of those action shots, and I wish you the best of luck in this upcoming Autocross season.
Yeah, certainly. I'll try to pull a podium round out here for you so I can have some good results to share back. So
absolutely.
Yeah, and thank you for the time. It's been great talking to you.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the MitsuTimes podcast. Check out our Instagram and Facebook for daily updates. Get added to our list by going to MitsuTimes.org and clicking Submit a Slip. Thank you to all of our sponsors.